My father closed the circuit to motor racing in 1966. I came back down here 3 years after that, in 1969, and I decided that I wouldn't disturb the situation at all because my father had started the motor racing, and therefore I should respect his decision to stop it. And therefore I decided not to do anything until he had passed on.
I think it's almost best to describe the timeline of what happened to the Goodwood Motor Circuit between 1966 and, say, 1996, those 30 years, as being frozen in aspic. It sat here, it was used, it moulded away around the edges. You know, if you don't use it, you lose it. It was not a pretty place by 1996.
A year or so after my father's death, my son said, "Can we get going again on the motor circuit?" And I said, "Yes."
It was just such a wonderful piece of timing that a man like Charles March should be taking over the estate in the early 90s. His one dream was not the Festival of Speed, it wasn't the members' meeting, it was to revive the circuit. That was his big thing right from the word go. But it was a mammoth task. Very early on, it became apparent there would be opposition from local people, especially in Somersdale, which is the closest residential area to the circuit. And they formed an action group, which came as no surprise to us, but they formed something they called the Environmental Protection Group.
And they were writing letters to the Chichester Observer, and I thought this is not on, so I wrote letters supporting the return of racing at Goodwood. And so did another guy called Mike Lawrence. We had a long telephone chat and he said it would be a good idea if we set up a supporters association. I said, fantastic. It ended up in the end with 2,500 members. And at the final council meeting, we had councillors standing up saying, "I have 53 letters of support and only 2 against." And so the planning permission was given. It went through 13-8, which we were delighted about.
Once we decided to keep the track exactly as it was, I guess it was quite easy in many ways to do the job, because the brief was kind of, in many ways, how it had been, or certainly how people imagined it had been. We couldn't build a pit lane. The pit lane, as it used to be, was entirely inappropriate, so we had to build that in the style of. But actually, if you look at it, it's in fact quite a modern building. It's an interesting building. The very lovely old sort of wartime buildings are around on the site. We had to rebuild all of those. The track, thankfully, had never been destroyed or dug up, though the surface was a bit rickety in places, but basically that didn't require a huge amount of work. And then, of course, there were the planning issues and the safety issues, so we had to put a proper bank all the way around the circuit. We had to put in acoustic banks as well, so in the end we decided to build an entire bank around the whole track, which worried me a bit, because I felt that might change the feel of the circuit, the geography. So there is this high-level bank now around the whole circuit which kind of undulates. You don't really feel it, and if anything, I think it's hugely enhanced everyone's experience of Goodwood.
Other than that, it was just, we had to smarten it up. You know, it was like a refurb, a giant refurb. You know, lots of painting, lots of new grass, lots of all that sort of thing. I will just never, ever, ever forget the Friday morning of the first revival in 1998. I think it was we all were, I mean, we were exhausted anyway after 5-6 years of working on the thing. It was a beautiful morning, and I think we just thought, we've done it. We've actually done it. You know, we're going racing at Goodwood again. Amazing feeling.